Welcome, everyone. This is the second Lunch and Learn in our webinar series. We are from the Food Innovation and Business Hub at Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. We are so thankful that you are here today, and we are excited about this topic. There's definitely a lot of questions surrounding the cottage food law and then the home food processing establishment license that is governed through our state of Iowa. We are thrilled and excited to have Penny Brown-Huber with us today. Penny is a food business specialist in our office, and she is going to have some time for some questions at the end, but it might almost be easier if you pop those in the chat, and then I can monitor those questions while she is presenting, and we'll get to them at the end. So without further ado, Penny, welcome. Thanks for being here today, and please feel free to start.
Thank you. Thank you, Krista. So I'm very happy to be able to talk about this topic today. There's just so much interest across the state, and I've been making presentations on this program for a bit now, so I look forward to your questions. Know that we're here, and we would love to get emails, phone calls, be able to work with you one-on-one. So please feel free to reach out. And from the smallest question to helping with all kinds of business challenges that you have. So today, I wanted to tell you about our Iowa Small Food Processing Digest. It's something that you can subscribe to. It is free. It only comes out in January and July, but it's really focused on topics that small food processors are most concerned about. So you'll see things like food safety ideas and tips and stories of other folks around the state trying to do maybe something similar to what you're doing. If we know about grants that are available, events, conferences. So I want to encourage you to go to the, excuse me, the Food Innovation Hub and subscribe. And I think you would find it can be very helpful to you as you're building your small business. So let's just talk about the cottage law. And the way that I talk about it is trying to break it down into two parts, because it is very confusing if you try to read the law. And one of the reasons that we're here is to help make things more understandable. And so the way I talk about the cottage law, which was created in 2022, is kind of thinking about it in two levels. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll have that sort of clearly in your mind yourself. So we're really talking about shelf-stable products that are prepared in the home. And it could be on a farm or in your home if you live in an urban environment. There's actually no license required from the Iowa Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licenses. And part of the reason for that is because when the law was written, it was thinking about how you as the business owner is having a relationship with a consumer who's buying directly from you. So you meet them, they meet you, you develop trust, you're having those one-on-one conversations. But what the law basically said was you can only sell your products in three ways. That would be from your home or farm out your back door. You could sell it at a farmer's market stand. It could be a craft market, holiday market. There's lots of flea markets. You can sell your products there, or you could sell them online. And you don't have to just sell them online in Iowa. You can sell them online throughout the country. The only thing there is you just need to be sure that your products can be sold in other states. Iowa tends to be more rigorous in their rules, so you might find that Iowa's rules are a little bit more rigorous, but just make sure that you're complying with, if you're selling products into Colorado, then you'll want to make sure that your cottage products work for both Iowa and Colorado. The products must be shelf stable, and this is kind of sometimes a unusual word for people, but really, what it gets down to is that you don't have to use temperature to control your food safety, meaning it doesn't have to go into the refrigerator once it gets done. And so the products will have a pH lower than 4.6 and a water activity less than 0.85. And that's a way in which we can determine that your products can be shelf stable. So often this is, something that works for bakers or for people who are canning. They'll be very familiar with the idea of shelf stable products. I'm sorry, I feel like my allergies are kicking up somehow in my voice. So I typically want to recommend getting a little bit of food safety training. We have a online home-based kitchen operations course at the Iowa State Extension store. You could go to the Iowa State Extension store and plug in 16554. And it's a nice course. I've actually taken it myself. So you go through a module, then there's a quiz. When you pass the quiz, you go to the next module, and you have 6 months to pass the course, but it'll give you some really great tips for your home-based kitchen around food safety. And then you'll get a certificate at the end of completing the course. And I always recommend to people, put that if you're taking your products to the farmer's market, put it in a frame, set it at your booth. And it really helps your customers understand that you do care about food safety, and they'll see that you've been trained. This course also applies to the level 2 if you ever do decide to continue to expand your business, and the certificate will be good for the level 2. The other thing I just want to recommend is you can use some templates that the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals have created, and they're not required, but it's a good way to practice if you're very interested in building a business over time. And they're just in an Excel format. You don't have to change them. You don't have to improve them, add columns. You can just use them the way they are. But it'll give you a chance, if you haven't been recording when you're receiving products in to make your ultimate product, or who you're selling to. It might just give you a chance to play with some templates and kind of get used to those kinds of questions and information that the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals would actually require you to have if you went to the level 2 cottage law when it comes to licensing. Often I have a lot of people ask me about their labels, and labels sometimes, depending on your product, can be a little tricky, but this is the basic information that you need on your label. So you'll need the name of your business, and I typically tell people city and state, and I have talked to Dial about this, and you can leave off your street address. So your name of your business, city, state, and then a phone number or email, and preferably, not your personal phone or email. And it's just a way for a customer to get back to you if they have a problem with your product. Then you'll have the common name of your food. Like here you can see a picture of sweet corn salsa. They like more common names on the labels. Ingredients in the product from heaviest to lightest by weight. And this is a little not always the way we think about how ingredients are listed, but I can give you an example of what this means. I had somebody who was making like Rice Krispie type bars, and they had like 4 cups of Rice Krispies, and they were using like a marshmallow kind of to glue it together. And of course, the marshmallow actually was heavier than the 4 cups of Rice Krispies. So it's not what's, the most in terms of volume, because something might be very light. So it's really the heaviest to the lightest by weight. And this, this because often when we see labels, we'll see that sugar is the first ingredient on a product, and that's because sugar is very heavy. So you'll want to put those in order. If you're a baker and you're using chocolate chips, say in your cookies, you might find yourself putting chocolate chip, and then you'll want to put parentheses. And let's say you're using Nestle chocolate chips, you'd have to put the ingredients from the Nestle chocolate chip bag on your ingredient list. And that can get sometimes to be quite a bit. So you have to kind of think through that. I always recommend weight in ounces and grams because it's just a best practice kind of thing. You'll want to help your customers understand the size. Customers are very used to going to the grocery store and looking at prices, the price of something to the number of servings or the ounces. But it's a good practice to get into putting the weight in ounces and grams, and you can do that by getting a kitchen scale that measures both of those. A list of allergens, and we're going to talk about that in a second a little bit more. And then you would need this statement: this product was produced at a residential property exempt from state licensing and inspections. What this statement is conveying as the Iowa Department of Inspections, this is their guidance, that it's letting the consumer know that you're buying this product from someone who is making the product in their home and that they aren't licensed or inspected. But so that has to be on your label. And then finally, you have to make a choice about, do you want to put a date processed on your label, or you can also put a best used by date. So I'll give you an example of that. My husband makes jams, and he typically will put a year on his jam. He'll say best used by a year from when he made it. Some products, people are looking more for when it was actually processed. So you have to make some judgment there, but you can always have a label you're printing off and leave the best used by and then a line. And then you can use a Sharpie and just write in a date. So you're not having to change the label all the time. That can get kind of burdensome. So once you often we'll look at product labels. If you're interested in having us just look it over and make sure it's right, we can do that. And what I always hope people will do is, let's say they have mild, medium, and hot salsa. You're talking about 3 labels there, and trying to get something standardized. So it kind of helps you a little bit. All right, I wanted to talk about allergens just briefly because here is the primary and the secondary list of allergens. Of course, we all know milk, eggs, fish. We're very accustomed to wheat and peanuts and soy. Sesame is a newer allergen. It came out last January in 25. So that gives you a chance to think about, if you do using some kind of sesame in your product, you would have to list it as an allergen. I typically tell people on the label, you would just put allergens, And then you might put, for bakers, it might be milk, eggs, tree nuts, wheat. Okay. So don't put gluten. Sometimes I see gluten on a label. Use the appropriate allergen words that are the primary allergen identifiers. Some people can be allergic to maybe a certain kind of tree nut, but not other tree nuts. So it's good to have sort of that list on you, like when you're at the market, and if people have questions that they need to ask of you. So, okay, so that's quite a bit, and I'm going to move into the home food processing establishment license, which I consider level 2. And when we get done, we can go back and forth and between level 1 and level 2 with your questions. So, all right. In the cottage law, what I kind of call level 2, it's where you're actually going to get a home food processing establishment license from the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals. It's going to cost $50. You will have to go into their website and make an application. And but before we do that, there's quite a few steps we need to get in place. So when you're making and selling products out of your home and they're shelf stable, the level 1 is direct to consumer, but the level 2 offers you an opportunity to be able to sell some of your products wholesale and up to 50,000 in sales. So, for example, you may be a baker and you have wonderful pies, fruit pies, and a coffee shop asks if you'll bake some pies and sell them to them. And you could do that with this license. This is where you're not actually standing there selling your product. You've sold your product wholesale, and then that business is turning around, marking it up and selling it to their customers. So the trick here is to keep your sales sort of separated. You'll want to track your cottage level 1 sales because you can sell as much as that as you want. But when you start to sell wholesale, you have to keep track of it, because when your sales exceed 50,000, they're going to be asking you to move out of your home to make the product. So it has a little bit, to me, it feels like a somewhat narrow window. 50,000 may seem like a lot to some, but sometimes we see folks can get to that level pretty quickly. So again, you're doing shelf-stable products. There might be a little bit more variability in some of the products that you can make under this license, but you are going to have to get your products tested in a certified lab, which we're really proud that we have a lab you can use here at Iowa State now, and that will be a future program. So you'll have to make sure that your pH, your water activity, you may have to have your soluble solids tested. There would be some requirements to get your products tested, and the inspectors will want to see those tests from the lab. If you've already taken the home-based kitchen operations and got your certification, you could check that one off. Otherwise, you can also do ServSafe, which typically is good for about 3 years. A lot more robust for sure, but it covers a lot of territory, so that might be something you'll want to do. There are going to be some templates that you're going to have to utilize, and it's something that you can find these templates at the Iowa Food Protection Task Force, and again, you can just use them the way they are. Some people will put them in their tablets. Some people want to use them, put them on the computer and plug their numbers in. Some people just print off the Excel spreadsheets and write what they need to do in the templates. So you have some options there, but here are the items that you would need in order to get your license for home-based. You'd have to have some standard processes and practices. You'll have to standardize your recipe. The inspector will want to see actually how do you make this product, and it's just a step-by-step way that you go about it. You'll need to have probably a page on what are some of your hygiene standards for your business. How are you keeping anybody who's not feeling the best out of the kitchen, that type of thing. Your temperature monitoring records, there should be a way to monitor your refrigerator, if you're using a freezer, if you're cooking something to a temperature that you're monitoring that and recording it, that will be very important. If you're once you have your product actually tested for pH, you can also buy a pH meter, and you can do the pH testing once the lab has done it for you. But you need to calibrate that equipment because they, over time cannot be accurate. So you'll have to calibrate it and record when you calibrate it. They always talk in terms of batch records, and the way I think about it is, let's say somebody is making a big pot of spaghetti sauce, marinara sauce, and it's in like an Amish pot, very large pot, and it's going to go into 30. It's going to get canned into 30 jars. That entire Amish pot is a batch. And when you go to get your sauce tested, then you're going to have to pull a jar from 3 different batches. And it's, it could be a batch might be like you're going to make 10 dozen cookies, and you do the whole entire dough and everything. That's a batch. Trying to get that kind of in your head what a batch might look like. You'll have to do some sanitation recording, like how are you cleaning your kitchen? What are the cleaners you're using? We need to be careful that we're using food grade cleaners, and what's the process? Are you rinsing, then cleaning, then rinsing again? You'll have to have a record about how you clean your countertops, how you clean your equipment, your floors, that you've got a process established for that. If you have employees, you'll have to have some training documents. We don't always want people using equipment they don't really know how to use. So none of these documents are usually more than 1 or 2 pages. They're pretty short. You'll have to keep track of who you're selling your product to, and there's a template for that, and then for receiving. And I've had a lot of people use the templates and they like them. It kind of keeps you on track with what you need to do if they ever come back. So before I go on there, let me just hold a second here. I wanted to, oops, hold on. I just want to say to you about all these templates. We've worked with quite a few people to help them get all of this information in place. I really want to encourage that we get the information written before we go into the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals website to begin to fill out the forms, to say we want the license. Once you pay your $50, that's when your year begins. So we need to be ready. with all the information, and we can help. Like, I've taken several people, quite a few people through this. And then what's great is when the inspector comes, it's one visit, and they can approve it. They can approve your license right away so that you can keep moving forward. The label for level 2 is pretty much the same. One difference would be if you do need to instruct on the label that once they open it, they need to refrigerate it. That will be an important addition that you will add. This statement is slightly different. It says this product was produced at a home food processing establishment. And that's the product that's been chosen for the home-based food establishment license processors. So you'd have to change the statement, but otherwise, you know, quite a bit stays the same on your label from level 1. You'll have to list your allergens again, same as date process can. There's the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's labeling guide does not, they don't want to see any funky things on labels, like that you can cure hiccups, or or you know, if you eat this product, you'll your blood pressure will go down. You can't say things like that. However, you could say things like handcrafted. That's a handcrafted product. Made in Iowa. So there are some descriptors that you could use, and those are things that we could help you with your label. So I want to encourage you to ask yourself a few questions. There are other things here, but just really stepping back and looking at your kitchen, thinking about it as a production facility, and you know, the equipment, the space, the utilities needed, and you know, like, is the process you'll set up in your kitchen, is it a nice flow? And so give that some thought. Record keeping is really about traceability, so that if something happens and people get sick, you know, we really need to track these different items so that we can get the product back or have the product destroyed so people don't get sick. And then I want to encourage you to give some thought to the insurance you might need. Of course, if you go to a farmer's market, they often need some insurance, and it's typically a rider, but it would be a good conversation to have. You know, if you're a baker, you may have, may not be that much additional liability, but if you're canning, you know, you just need to think about, are you getting the kind of coverage you might need for insurance? So those are just 3 ideas to kind of think a little bit about when you're thinking about your business. I do cottage law programs across the country or across the state. Oh, the country, that would be crazy. So these are some of the different places I'll be going forward here. And I do go into a little bit more detail because we have more time when I go out on the road. And maybe you might know some folks who would also, you know, it'd benefit them from coming. I can look at, it's easier for me to see a product. I often look at a product. I do one-on-ones to help people when I'm out on the road continue to make progress. So I welcome you to share this, and to, if you want to come to one and we can have a conversation, that would be great too. So the other thing is, I'm going to let Krista talk about this briefly, is about some of the other programs we're going to have.
Yes, so this is not the end of our Lunch and Learn series. We are going to continue doing this monthly. So we've got some great topics coming up. If you click that link in the presentation, or copy that link is what I should say, then you can find that registration page. And that's really nice. All of our Lunch and Learns are free of charge, but registering kind of sends you a little reminder, hey, this is coming up. Don't forget to click the link. And it just lets us know if we're hitting that mark of what folks are needing and really identifying with. So we've got some great topics coming up on not only your customer, but food safety, the food analysis lab that we have, all of the analytical services that Erin's team can provide. And then we're very excited about our August Lunch and Learn on frostings. We have learned so much about frosting in the last year. And we're really excited for a lot of our bakers around the state to be able to have some more shelf-stable frostings to utilize that are recognized by the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing. So while Penny's wrapping up here, would like to just encourage everyone to quick type in any answer section up at the top there. I apologize, I said chat earlier, and the chat feature is not working quite right. So please use that question and answer session, and we would love to get your questions answered while we have Penny here. Maybe one to start off, Penny, while folks are thinking about this. You've worked a lot with our cottage food producers around the state. Is there one area where you see folks kind of consistently maybe needing a little nudge or needing a little improvement in labeling, in pricing products, and getting testing done? Anything you would want to expand on there?
I think that it's always great to have another eye looking at some of the finer details you need to do. Like the label is, it can have a creative component to it, and then it still has to capture all the information for the consumer. So I think, we're happy to provide that service. Really, I find that people can get stuck sometimes particular thing. And I just always encourage people just to email or call, because we probably can get you unstuck really quickly and save you a lot of time. There's a lot of just sometimes nuances about products that can get kind of, you can kind of get stuck on. And I can tell you that I've had lots and lots and lots of people try to read the cottage law and it gets very confusing. So I just think having a real conversation might be extra helpful, because I'm going to go off of this and just so I can see. And it's really exciting, I think, to be able to have all these small businesses starting. There are some, I'm thinking about bakers right now. Sometimes they are at the market, they're serving a 3 by 3 inch bar. How do I do a label for that? Well, there's a way that we can talk through, so you're not putting a label on every bar, because people are probably going to grab that bar and eat it as they walk the as they walk the market. So sometimes we have to just be realistic too, about how things can work. So I think what I'm sometimes so amazed by is just the creative foods coming out of the cottage law. It's a pretty amazing to watch people think about their family traditions and their ideas about what to make. It's really exciting.
We do have a couple questions starting in, Penny. So first one is, what does water activity mean?
So always interesting. We should let one of our scientists take that.
I'm happy to jump in if you're okay with that, Penny.
Yeah.
So my name's Erin Norton. I'm co-directing the Food Innovation and Business Hub with Krista, and my group runs the service lab, so we can test water activity. And so hopefully you're familiar with moisture content, and that really just means how much water is in a food. That's your moisture content. But water activity is a little bit more specific in that how much water is available and free. I'm going to say available. I think that's a better term. And this really comes into play with food safety and whether or not microorganisms can grow. And microorganisms, bacteria, yeast, mold, and things like that, they need a certain amount of water to be able to survive and grow. And it's not just about how much moisture is in a food product, but how much water is available to those microorganisms. So that's what water activity is measuring. And for different, there are some standard, guidelines about where water activity is, where foods are safe if they're under a certain amount. We won't get into that. We've got another lunch and learn coming up about that, and we'll get into the specifics of that. But we can measure that here in our lab.
Thanks for jumping in, Erin. Are batch pH measurement records required for home canned items sold as cottage food?
So, is this in cottage level 1? Because it would be no, but in the licensing level 2, yes. Excuse me.
Okay. How about if you get to the threshold of having to produce outside of the home, we're over that $50,000 mark. What are the rules for the next facility? Can we put in a commercial kitchen on our property, or does it have to be a certain location that is already certified?
Mhm. So you could put a commercial kitchen on your property. It's going to be a totally different license and the requirements will be tougher, and we could help you work through that. And we have had some customers who have done that. And I kind of get that sometimes because the convenience of making products out of your home and all of a sudden having to go somewhere. We are trying very hard to get shared use kitchens established around the states so that when people are outgrowing the license, you know, their sales are exceeding 50,000 on their wholesale, they'll have somewhere to go. So yes, you can build a commercial kitchen on your property, but it would be a different license. Yeah. One of the things I think people sometimes get confused about, you can have lots of licenses doing different things. Like we met with somebody last week that had a catering license, a food service establishment license, and she's probably going to start making something in her home under cottage level 1. So it's partly because she's feeling like she gets pulled around a lot, and she's got her license for different purposes. So yeah, you can have multiple.
Any other questions? I think I am caught up in the chat.
So, I don't know if everybody caught my email, but it's just pbhuber, Huber, at iastate.edu. And feel free to reach out and talk with me, and no problem's too small. So.
Okay, I'm putting in a final call here. I do want to encourage everyone to follow up. This isn't an easy process to navigate. So if you have a question, please do reach out. That is the whole impetus of creating the Food Innovation and Business Hub, is to help make this a little bit easier path for our entrepreneurs to navigate. We don't want you to get lost in the details or the regulation and then miss something. We want this to be successful for everyone and an opportunity to create and grow a business. So Penny gave her email. Just would encourage you again to go to the website too. If you are needing information, we may have information already on there and are certainly available to answer questions at any time. So wanted to thank Penny for her time today in sharing this. This is a great topic. We certainly generate a lot of interest around the state, as you can see from her list of upcoming presentations. So if you happen to be in an area and want to catch her in person, please feel free to do that as well. And then please join us again next month. We're going to dive into finding that customer and really making sure you're targeting who you want as that customer. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.